Welcome to The Grind, a podcast about the church planting process and missional strategies to make disciples of all nations. Coming to you from the offices of the Arkansas Baptist State Convention in Little Rock, Arkansas. Now, here are your hosts, Dave McClung and Chad Grigsby.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen in Grind Podcast Land. I am Dave McClung, and with me is the lovely Chad Grigsby.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, Chad. Yeah, how you doing?
Good, you?
I'm good. You may be wondering why you are seeing our glorious faces in this little video session here. We are going to do some video recaps of the podcasts that we record this year as kind of a new wrinkle in the Grind podcast. And so it'll cut down on the amount of time we actually spend recording on the podcast and shorten the length of those a little bit and really kind of tighten them around the interview. And so we thought we'd do a little off-week video recap to kind of highlight some significant things that were said. You'll be seeing some articles come out of these podcasts as well, just some written thoughts as just another medium, another way to capture some of the things that were said in the podcast. And so just trying to, I know you guys have been screaming and wanting more and are tired of just hearing our voices and wanted to see how lovely we were in person. And this is the next best thing.
This is it.
This is it. I mean, this is what you got. So
this is it.
So
downhill.
Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoy this, and we're going to do, we'll probably keep these around 10, 12 minutes, so not too long, little short things. And if we get really good at it, we may keep them shorter than that. So we'll see. That's maybe asking a lot because we like to talk a little bit. So that's why we're doing this, and just to have some other content on the off weeks from releasing podcasts. And so this last week, we got to have a very special interview for me. As we got to interview my dad, Paul McClung.
The Dad Cast, as we've been calling
The Dad Cast, that's right.
Yeah.
And so 60 years in the ministry, pastored all of those, did some clinical pastoral care for a couple of hospitals. He's just done, small churches, large churches, rural churches, urban churches, denominational work. He's had a long, successful, healthy ministry. And so we thought it'd be a great idea to kind of pick his brain on some things that allowed him to be in ministry for 60 years. And so we thought we'd take a few moments here and recap some of those things that we found pretty significant and share with you. And hope these will encourage you and strengthen you in your ministries as well. And so, Chad, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, it's not every day that you get to have a conversation with someone who has 60 years ministry experience. Yeah. And what's interesting is, I've loved a lot of the podcasts we've done. And although your dad's never planted a church, done almost everything else. Yeah. It's amazing how I felt like this was the most applicable to church planters and planting of any podcast we've ever done. Yeah. So I don't know if that's ironic or or what, but just so much good stuff. So, we did an article recently following up with a podcast about kind of 4 priorities your dad talked about how to give your life to your church without losing your life. Yeah. So that, that's on the website. You should check that out. That was probably my biggest takeaway from that. So really enjoyed that. A couple other things that stood out to me is, your dad was kind of like the same guy, no matter what size church or, whether he was pastoring halftime churches, 2 halftime churches or a big church at the end of his ministry. He's just the same guy, just loving people, ministering to people, no matter the church size. I thought that was, spoke to his character. Yeah. Who he is.
And that what you see is what you get. With Dad, and I quote him all the time on the podcast, and you got to get a glimpse of why. And you don't last 60 years in the ministry with all kinds of people without learning a few things about people and how to care for them, how to lead them, how to shepherd them. And, Dad's strengths are, pastoral care. I mean, he's an incredible shepherd, teaching, preaching, he enjoys. But the pastoral care side, the evangelism side has always been very gifted in those areas, and has always had a great knack for taking tough people and helping them be transformed by the gospel. And so learned so much. Yeah, I'm pretty biased on this episode, obviously, but he's left me an incredible name, incredible legacy and reputation to tarnish immensely.
You're doing your fair share to do that. So.
I am, my goal is to destroy all of that, and well on my way.
He said something kind of funny in an age where pastors are kind of trying to get away from pastoral care. He said at one point, please don't put me in an office doing admin work. Just let me go to the hospital and visit somebody. And it just, I don't know, just made me laugh, just knowing how he's wired to do that. But it also kind of highlights what I think we talk about a lot, which is you got to surround yourself with a team. Yeah. If you're not an administrative person, you got to have somebody, on your planting team who can do the administrative stuff. Yeah. And likewise, if you're not a great shepherd, you're going to need to have some people who can shepherd around you. It's why we emphasize APEST from Ephesians 4 so much. And you got to have a well-rounded team. And he kind of seemed to know, one of the things I think he said was know your limits. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a good word. You got to know your limits, especially as a church planner, what you can do, what you can't. Yeah. Yeah. Don't try to do everything.
Yeah. And, and we spend a lot of time on that, through our church planning process. You got to know who you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at. And that doesn't mean the things you're not good at, you can't get better at. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have to do some of those things, along the way. There are a lot of people who have been immensely successful in various fields that do a lot of things they don't necessarily want to do or enjoy doing, but have to do to get where they want to be. And for Dad, the emphasis, and he kind of talked about this all the way through the podcast, his call to ministry was all about people, and helping people find Jesus. And so, he is really good at hospital visits and always enjoyed that, because Dad was always very good in kind of crisis situations when people were hurting and broken, looking for answers. He's the kind of guy you want in those situations. And so those crisis points were great ministry opportunities to introduce people to the great physician, to a heavenly Father who loves them more than they've ever known, before. And so those were always great times of ministry for him to maximize, his pastoral care gifting there.
Yeah. He said ministry, some people said ministry would be great if it weren't for the people, or pastoring would be great. He said people's your ministry.
That's right.
That's it. Loving people is the most crucial thing you can do. And he definitely modeled that. What I admire too is in his story is he was really willing to start small and to kind of almost take a church that would have him.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a sense, I'd hate to say pay his dues, but kind of, just go where the Lord would open the door, start small, and then, kind of go from there. I think a lot of guys, especially planters, they're looking for this place here, a discipleship pastor, or if I could just be a missions pastor. And I've known guys who are looking 2-3 years after seminary, still not at a church. Right. Because they're not just willing to go serve wherever God leads, wherever God opens the door. But your dad did that. Yeah. He was willing to do that.
Yeah. And there's some experiences that you gain in those kind of settings, those early church ministries, that pave the way for greater wisdom and strength and courage, later on down the line. And because in those churches, and it's just like any church you're involved in, you're going to have people who are always your encouragers, and you're going to have people who are always trying to fix you. And And so
probably more of the latter.
Yeah, sometimes, and so one of the things Dad always said, anytime there's any criticism, you take the husk and throw the rest away. You take the kernel, what's inside the nugget, and throw the other way. If there's something you can glean from this and learn from this, then take it and move on. Not all criticism is bad criticism, and God can use all of it to shape us and make us who He wants us to be as ministers. And I think too many guys are afraid of that, scared of that, and run from that when those are shaping moments that God uses to get us where we need to be.
Yeah, for sure. He also has, I think, a thing that you're often quoting, something like, look, don't lose your life in the midst of ministry, because as soon as you're gone, they're going to get them another one. Is that what he says? Something like that?
Yeah, they'll mourn you for 2 days, and then they'll go get them another one.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is he kind of said, every day I neglected something. I think he told you that early on in ministry. Every day you're going to lay down, you're going to realize you neglected something. The goal is not to neglect the same thing over and over.
Right. Yeah.
Or I've heard it said, make sure you're going to disappoint someone, make sure you're disappointing the right people.
Yeah. That's right.
I thought that was a really good thought in how do you balance the busyness, especially, we have a lot of Bivo church planners.
Yeah.
So they have a vocation.
Yeah.
They have a church, they have a family. That's their 3 main responsibilities. So, you gotta find a balance in there somewhere. Make sure you're neglecting the right things.
Yeah. And
not neglecting the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
I thought that was helpful.
Yeah. And, another thing he said, I think it's important to hear and understand that it's okay to say, I don't know. And that you can't fix everybody and you can't fix everything. And so be okay with that, do what you can do and be there when you can be there. And, if you can't, then that's okay. And bring somebody around you that can help. And so, lots of good stuff. We could have gone on and on and on, with that, and hope you enjoy the podcast, listen to the podcast. And, it was fun to get to do that with him. And, I've truly been blessed to have the kind of dad that would leave that kind of reputation legacy for me. And I'm still learning a lot, and hopefully one day I'll be able to leave the same kind of name and legacy with my kids. And the fact that I'm in church work and in the ministry and love it is a testimony to what kind of dad and pastor he was, even in home, for us. So I hope you guys are encouraged by that. There's a little recap. We've got Bill Elliff, pastor at Summit Church, North Little Rock, my pastor, coming up next. We'll talk a lot about prayer and the presence of Christ in church.
So since we've had your dad and now your pastor, what's next? Your dog?
My chauffeur.
Your chauffeur.
Chauffeur and my butler.
All right. So I just figured it had to be, every influential person in Dave's life on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's starting to turn into like an Oprah podcast.
Yeah.
A little bit,
I guess we could do my buddy Joel Faircloth, who was the first pastor I ever served with. And
I think we should keep it going.
Yeah, he could tell you some stories, that's for sure, because that was early ministry. And Warren Gazaway and Marcus Brown could tell some of those same stories too. So they will never be on the podcast, ever. Ever. So,
That's not the only reason, though.
That's right. That's right. Oh, goodness. All right, so look out for Bill coming up next week. Hope to see you guys at the Evangelism Conference at Geyer Springs, 29th and 30th. We'll do some podcasts from there as well. With some church planners, Sin City guys coming up. So stay tuned for that. And appreciate you guys joining us for a little bit.
If you stop by at the Evangelism Conference and see us and mention this video, we'll give you a t-shirt.
Hey, how about that for a deal?
A grind t-shirt. Just gotta mention this video.
T-shirt. That's right. Or you can write us a review on iTunes as well. That's another way.
Work.
Thomas Sewell, t-shirt, mug coming your way, buddy.
Yeah.
And so all right. Okay, man. Chad, good to see you, buddy.
You too. Take care. Keep grinding.
See you guys next week. Bye.